It was Ryne Sandberg Day at Wrigley. The Cubs legend was commemorated with a statue that was unveiled before the game, but unfortunately, the Cubs did not come to his aid and provide a win on that awesome day at Wrigley Field yesterday. The Cubs fell to the Mets 5-2 in what would have been a swing game in the tiebreaker at the end of the season if the Cubs and the Mets end up tied for a wild card spot. Christopher Morel, he's hitting in the sixth hole, but the rest of the lineup not joining him. We're going to talk about that. Plus, Mark Leiter Jr. to the IL. Who could come up and save this Cubs bullpen, if anybody? That and more on the Cubs baseball channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Jump in the comment section. Let us know what you think of the Ryne Sandberg statue and who you might think would be next to get a statue on that Gallagher Way. Here is your invitation to our show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs baseball channel. My name is Anthony Pasquale with the great Mick Gillespie. Busy weekend, bouncing around. He was in Rickwood for the game. Mick, what's going on, man?
Yeah, it's good to kind of get back here and hang out with you.
Yeah.
What a special day for the Cubs as far as Rhino's concerned. But again, the team's struggling, and I guess we just gotta kind of take the good with the bad. It seems like there's a lot more bad right now than good with these guys, but all over. I mean, forget about the game. I'm so happy that Rhino got the statue. I thought they did a great job at the ceremony.
Yeah, without a doubt. You posted on your Twitter at Broadcaster Mick a nice homage to Ryne Sandberg, who you got to work with a lot. Tell us about your experiences with Rhino and why he's a better person than he was a player.
Yeah, that's what I put on there, and I have a picture of us in the post-game locker room, AA 2009, the Smokies. He won the second half. The best story I can tell you is that the team stunk in the first half, and we lost 9 in a row. And I remember Darwin Barney came by. You remember that name, Gold Glover. Yeah. And he goes, Mick, I've never dealt with losing like this before. And then Rhino said to me, and I'm sure he told the team the same thing. We're going to be better for this. We'll be better players. I'll be a better manager. Everybody's going to be better for have gone through that experience. And we turned it around after that. We ended up at the very end of that half, we were the worst team in the league, but we beat the team that looked like they were going to make the playoffs. We played spoiler. And then the second half of the season, we rolled and ended up winning the half, and then went and got into the championship series. But Rhino, old school guy, do things the right way, play the game the right way, respect your teammates, be a good teammate. The organization got better because of Rhino.
Yeah.
Like he wanted to be good. No, he wanted to be great. And then you want it to be great because he wanted to be great. I said this, like the guy would have chewed his arm off to win a game. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like he just was so hungry for a win. He made everyone better. And then over the course of the season, became good friends with Rhino. He's a practical joker. I can pull some practical jokes too. So we're kind of against each other. And then we teamed up by the middle of the season.
That's awesome.
I love him. I love him as a friend, as a mentor. And I've been so concerned, like all of us, that about the cancer, but hopefully he's won this thing because we've seen nothing but great reports lately.
Yeah, and he looked great at Wrigley yesterday, threw an awesome first pitch. They unveiled the statue. This is a replica of it. They gave him out at the game. So
cool.
It looks awesome. I thought it was interesting that his most memorable moment was, of course, the 2 home runs 40 years ago yesterday. But the statue was him playing defense, which I think is kind of fitting because he was so fundamental and so elite on that side of the diamond.
Yeah, I mean, he always kind of had like this smooth, robotic type of movement. I described it as, and I always thought Nico reminded me of Rhino in that aspect. Where he kind of had the broad shoulders and he kind of slides.
Yeah.
And gets the ball. I thought Nico hit a lot of line drives. I thought eventually that he'd be able to turn some of those line drives into home runs like Rhino did, who was a line drive hitter. That hasn't happened, but Rhino was iconic. I mean, we all wanted to wear 23 and play second base because of Rhino. I remember getting my first Rhino rookie card. It was a Topps, had like the circle of Rhino's face, and then Rhino, and then Rhino. You could have done hitting, but just that pose and kind of that like 80s looking Rhino with the hair and everything else. It's pretty special. I knew he was eventually going to get a statue. With the health scare, it was kind of nice to get it out there, but I think they did a great job with it.
Yeah, the ceremony was awesome too. A lot of his former teammates, and then all the other Cubs legends that are still alive were there. Obviously, you had the Ricketts family up there. I thought it was cool that Bob Costas was there because his broadcasts were such a big part of Sandberg's legend. And I saw in the comment section yesterday, a lot of people credit Ryne Sandberg for being the reason why they're Cubs fans, and I thought that was awesome to see. And then going back to the ceremony for a second, just when all the Cubs players were up along that like balcony part of Wrigley watching and clapping for him, I thought that was a nice touch too.
Yeah, and I worked with Bobby Dernier and I worked with Jody Davis, and I'm still good friends with Jody's really one of my best friends in baseball. I mean, we don't talk all the time, but when we do, we get together. He's such a great guy and he's a great friend to have. We've done some games on Marquee together as well, and on Cubs.com. He was a partner on there too. And Bobby Dernier, easy guy to talk to. But I had the opportunity to kind of talk to all those guys about that game. And I think everyone kind of felt like that was the day that Rhino became Rhino. He went from being kind of just like a really good young player to being like the face of the Cubs. And he was the face of the Cubs franchise for a long time and won the MVP that year. It helped the Cubs get to the playoffs. They could have gotten to the World Series. I mean, that's a topic for another day, but a lot of perspective on that 84 team. Plus, it was one of my favorite teams.
Yeah, without a doubt. It brought a lot of eyes to the Cubs, which was awesome to see. And you thought that yesterday, when they have those big ceremonies to honor a guy, you think there's no way that the Cubs lose that game, right? Well, unfortunately, they did. They looked lifeless from first pitch on against the Mets. Sunday Night Baseball, ESPN, they fall 5-2 to the Mets, and it was just an ugly game to watch.
This team has some problems, and there's just so many problems. One of them is that they look lifeless, like you said. Like I said, they play like a dead fish sometimes, and I felt like that they were breaking out of it a little bit. I mean, they had the big game, against the Mets in the middle game of the 3-game series, but every single pitcher that they face that is good looks great against them. Severino blew him away, 10 strikeouts in his 6 innings. He only allowed 3 hits. You never really felt like the Cubs were having the type of at-bats where they were really even putting a lot of pressure on Severino. And you feel bad for Javier Assad because, if you have a game where you give up 3 runs, you're done right now with this team, and it's like you look through the lineup and it just feels like it's a bunch of singles. Except for Christopher Morel.
Yeah, and we'll get into him in just a second. I want to talk about what Cliff Floyd said on the postgame. I don't know if you saw it, but he said this team offensively, when they go down like 1 to 2 runs early, it feels like they're down 10-0 and they've got no life. And there was such a good way to describe it. They're so like they just get all the air sucked right out of them, even if it's 1-0 or 2-0. It makes. And we talk about this team, they don't quit, and they always seem to put a rally together late, but you could score those runs in the 4th or the 5th, but it just seems like they're dead for the first 7 innings of the game.
Yeah, and it's good for Marquee to have someone on there that will criticize the Cubs because they need to be criticized some. They need to be praised when they're doing good, but they need to be criticized when they're not, and he's exactly right. And it's hard because you want to go on there and keep, flashing sunshine and rainbows, but this season hasn't been that way. The offense has been inept, inconsistent, or consistent at being bad, and it's like, when is it going to turn around? I mean, we just continue to wait for the offense to turn around. But the problem is is that against great starting pitching or good starting pitching, the Cubs are, like he said, they're done, you know, and if you give up one run, you feel like if you're a pitcher that you're out of it. But they don't hit with runners in scoring position. You don't see a lot of at bats where you're like, no, that was a great at bat. And there's a guy that the Cubs have in the minor leagues named James Triantos. The guy gives you a great at bat, you know, and you know, hopefully he eventually gets up there and gives you a great at bat. And as much as I like some of the guys on the big league team, like a Nico Horner or a Dansby Swanson or Christopher Morel, these young guys may be better. They may be better. Maybe not right now, but they may be better. And I don't think that the Cubs are in a position to look at many of these players as long-term solutions to success. And I'm sorry to say that, but this is the second year where we've gone through this, where they're just not good. Now, they turned it around last year, and then they went back to this. Beginning of this year, they were hitting, and now they're back to being terrible again. And you throw it up there, 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position. They just don't get the big hits. And against the good starting pitching, just to kind of reiterate my point, I never feel like they're putting much pressure on those guys.
No, not at all. And you have these guys cruising into the 6th and the 7th with low pitch counts. They're not working at bats. They're swinging early in counts and popping it up. But you mentioned a good point is like, I don't know if you look around this lineup and you see how many of these players are going to be a part of the next winning team. And the issue is a lot of them are under contract for quite some time. Like in 2021, maybe you looked around and thought, okay, probably not going to win anymore with Baez, Rizzo, and Bryant, but at least you could trade them. Like you can't trade Dansby, you can't trade Seiya, can't trade Happ. Like they have years left on the deals, and even if you wanted to, you wouldn't get what you think you deserved back because they're underperforming. So that part's rough. It's weird that you look around this team and you see Seiya Suzuki is having a really strong June, and Michael Busch is having a really strong June, and Dansby Swanson's heating up, and Ian Happ's been better over the last month or so. Why isn't it turning into wins? Why can't they both, any of these guys, why can't they both do it on the same day? Why can't we get more than 3 to 4 or 5 runs? And yesterday, or 2 days ago, I should say, Saturday was a really good showing. You put 5 up in the first and you win 8-1, but it always seems like right when you take that step forward, the step back comes, and that was yesterday. Cubs 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position. Bellinger had a pretty lengthy at-bat and ended up chasing a pitch. Crow-Armstrong looked a little overmatched against Severino yesterday. The only guy that's been putting good at-bats together this weekend really is Christopher Morel. Since he got moved to the 6th hole, he's got a 3-game hitting streak going, homers in each of the last 2 games. It just feels like the pressure's off of him a little bit, and he's looking better at the plate.
Yeah, we said that too. We're like, hey, did a whole show talking about it's the headline.
Yeah.
And then since they moved him, it's like magic. And I didn't expect that to happen. I just was like, hey, the guy's not producing at all as the cleanup batter. I don't know why it's that way. You know, do you get pitched to differently when you're in the 6 hole compared to the 4 hole? Are the situations that you're in different when you're in the 6 hole? Is it a mental thing in the 6 hole compared to the 4 hole or whatever, anywhere in the lineup? I don't know, but it's good to see at least he's starting to do his thing again. You know, maybe you can get him to carry a little bit. Ian Happ's picked games like where he'll have a big game every week or so. Sure. And the Cubs right now they're just scratching and clawing to get, you know, a series and not get swept. And the sweeps are what's going to totally knock them out of the playoff race. But I'm glad Morel's starting to hit. I mean, I guess it's one of the bright spots in another dismal offensive performance.
Yeah, I really thought this series was going to be kind of when the Cubs started to get back on track. Like you win that series against the Giants, you got Shota going on Friday, you got the Ryne Sandberg game Monday or Sunday, I should say. You feel like you got a pretty good chance to do something with this series, missing some of the Mets' best pitchers, and you end up losing the series. And speaking of losing, the Cubs have lost Mark Leiter Jr. for the foreseeable future, probably one of their most reliable arms in the bullpen, although over the last 2 weeks or so, he's been very bad, probably because of this injury. He goes to the IL. Luke Little is recalled. He pitched yesterday. So Porter Hodge and Luke Little are both staying up now that Mark Leiter is to the IL. Just when the bullpen's starting to get healthy with Almonte and Merriweather around the corner to coming back, Mark Leiter Jr. hits the shelf.
Yeah, this is bad. I mean, he's been one of the guys you could really count on. But it goes to show, I mean, he's had to pitch a lot lately. He's been one of the few guys that you could rely on in a close game, and now you don't have him. So now your entire bullpen from last year that you used, I called it the A bullpen, the entire A bullpen now from last year is gone, all on the IL.
Of Merriweather, Leiter Jr. and Assad or
That's
Alzlai.
Alzlai. Those were the three guys.
Yeah, that was your 7th, 8th, 9th of every game.
Yep. And now look, what are you going to do? I mean, this is a big one. I don't even know what the answer is for the Cubs, but it just feels like every time you turn around this season, something else bad happens.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's just kind of been how it is for the Cubs. We talked about the Rhino statue. We've got one more question for you guys and for you, Mick, about this. Who is the next Cub or Cubs to get statues? Now, obviously, there's a few guys who are commemorated with their number retired that don't have statues. That's Andre Dawson and Greg Maddux. So those are two potential options, maybe. I think Sammy Sosa is a big one that you always see people say. But if they haven't welcomed him back to even throw a first pitch, I feel like a statue is very far down the road. And then the 2016 team has to be some type of thought and a way to commemorate them. I don't know if it's going to be like a Rizzo one or a Bryant one or like a combination of the final out. Or do you go like the Madden route or the Theo route? Because they were the executives who got things done. So I gave my thoughts yesterday. So before I do that, let's get your thoughts, Mick.
Yeah, you got Ernie, you got Fergie, you got Ronnie, you got Billy, and you got Harry, right? Now you got Rhino.
Now you got
Rhino. You know what? I mean, Greg Maddux and Andre Dawson, two of my all-time favorite Cubs. They're both in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. I know they didn't spend their entire careers there.
Right.
But
and I think that's probably why they don't have one currently.
Yeah. Pat Hughes could get one. I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame now. Everybody loves Pat. I could see him. Maybe they just make a sweater. So I guess it could be one of those two guys. I would love to see a statue of the last out of the World Series, like Chris Bryant and maybe Anthony Rizzo and somehow Javi Baez in there. I know that those guys aren't the performers now that they used to be, but they got us the World Series. That's always going to be at the top of my sports memories. Going to that World Series was a dream come true. Mm-hmm. So I guess I would go there. But I love the Hawk, and I told you, how many times have I talked about stories about Maddux? I mean, there's some you can tell on here and some you can't. But he'd be a great statue too. He came up as a Cub too, remember, and then he came back and got a 300th win with the Cubs. So
right.
I'd be happy with either, but if you said to pick one, I'd say let's do the last out of the 2016 World Series.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think it's just such a magical moment that I think everybody recognizes. I know a lot of the fans have pushed back because that would mean Addison Russell because he's in that mob of the final out. And I know a lot of people have mixed feelings because of what went down in his career. And he's obviously the guy hugging Javi while Bryant and Rizzo were hugging and Montgomery and Coughlin and everybody. But I think like similar to what the White Sox have at guaranteed rate for the 2005 team, like it's got like a small statue, but then like a bunch of like pictures on a plaque of like all the different big moments, something like that. Because I think it was John Greenberg who posted on Twitter, the 10-year anniversary is coming up in just a few years. That'd be a great time to really, solidify that statue row with the 2016 team.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Without a doubt. Let's do a quick check of the standings as we head into a fresh new week of baseball. I mentioned this earlier because the Cubs lost to the Mets yesterday. That means that the Mets will hold the tiebreaker at the end of the season over the Cubs. That ended up being a big deal last year when the Cubs were jockeying for position with the Marlins and the Diamondbacks, who both had the tiebreakers over the Cubs. So that hurts. Unfortunately, the Reds and the Pirates both lost yesterday, and the Cubs couldn't take advantage. They would have hopped up to third place if they did beat the Mets yesterday. But as it stands right now, it's the Brewers keeping pace, but the Cardinals are inching up closer. They're starting to get hot offensively. They're in second place. The Pirates, the Cubs, and the Reds all separated between a game. I don't have the wild card standings pull up, but if you took a look at the NL wildcard standings, it's like one game or I guess now 2 games that all separates the Reds, the Cubs, the Pirates, the Mets, the Diamondbacks, Washington, and the Padres for the 3rd spot. So, like, the Cubs are still very much alive despite all of this heartache over the last month and a half. They just got to start winning ball games.
They still have a 21.2% chance to make the playoffs right now, which is crazy, right?
Yeah, crazy that they're almost a last place team with that much of a chance. But that's just how the National League is. The Giants, who you play next, are a half game behind you in those wild card standings. This could be a big series to, change those up. Obviously, the Nationals and Diamondbacks and Mets and Padres, all these teams ahead of you, you play a little bit, and they're going to be playing each other, so that we're going to see these standings jockey the whole time. But this division, on the other hand, pretty much looks like Milwaukee's to lose.
Yeah, well, the Cubs, I don't even know that the Cubs at this point should really even be thinking about Milwaukee. They just got to get back to playing great baseball on it and doing it through these injuries, like get back to 500 again. Like there's so many things that need to happen for them to even get in the same conversation as Milwaukee, who seems to be a team that's got the winning part of it figured out. But like you said, despite all of the losing, they're still right in there. And that's what makes all these wild cards. So the Major League Baseball wanted to do that, but there's only 2 teams that are out of it. You win 1 game a series and you're still in the wild card race. I don't think the Cubs can win the World Series. And if that's what the goal is, then the Cubs are going to have to make some hard decisions before the trade deadline.
Yeah, I think the Diamondbacks last year are a good example and a bad example. Like, it's a great thing for baseball that the last team to squeak in went all the way to the World Series and put together a great run. And it makes every team incentivized to try. But it also means that in theory, you could be aiming for 84 wins to squeak into the playoffs. And like, that's a lot easier to do than it is to go out and win 100 games. And I think that part, like, Jed Hoyer can fall back on the Diamondbacks and be like, well, all you got to do is get in and then you have a chance. No, dominate. You got to get back to dominating.
That's right.
At this point where they are right now, you do want to squeak in. Like, that's what you're looking at. Dominating is kind of off the table right now. So it makes these series against those teams that are jockeying for position all the more important. And the Cubs start one on the West Coast against the Giants today, 8:45 Central. I think we got some late nights coming up this series. And then the Cubs go to Milwaukee at the end of the week for a big series with the Brewers. But Counsell was asked after the game last night about who's going to be starting this series in San Fran. And he said, Justin's going to go Monday, Kyle's going to go Tuesday, and we'll figure it out from there. So I don't know if maybe Tyone or Assad or Shota maybe are going to get some days off or whatever based off of the last weekend. But we do have Justin Steele going tonight. He was excellent against the Giants last time out. 0-3 on the season. Still looking for that first win. The Cubs have won a few of his starts finally, but he doesn't have a win in that win column since last September. So that has to change soon. He's been pitching great. He's got a 3.16 ERA and I think a below 1 over his last 5 starts. The Giants have not yet announced a starter. Logan Webb pitched yesterday, so it won't be Webb, which is probably the guy that you'd like to avoid if you're the Cubs. But yeah, you start a series with today against the Giants with your ace on the mound. So hopefully tides start to turn soon.
Yep, let's get it done. I mean, at some point, this team's got to find some kind of groove, catch fire. I mean, they got to do something. They're still in it, but the Giants aren't very good. I mean, we saw them. I saw them at the Rickwood game. I saw them against the Cubs 3 games. They're not that good. The Cubs have to take advantage of a team like the Giants that I just don't think has a very good lineup.
Yeah, hopefully you can take 3 out of 4 on the road and then go to Milwaukee with some momentum this weekend. But that'll do it for this edition of the Cubs Baseball Channel. Thank you guys so much for coming along to talk some Cubs with us. It was Rhino Day yesterday, so get in the comment section. Let us know your favorite Rhino memory beside the Sandberg game. Pick a new one. I want to hear a new one. And let us know who you guys think the Cubs' next statue might be out in Statue Row in Gallagher Way right outside of Wrigley. But thank you guys for joining us. For Mick, I'm Ant. Go Cubs. We'll see you tomorrow.